If you guys have been following my triple body weight deadlift journey, then you know that I've had to change my program recently. And I want to do a video about how I changed my program, why I did it, and what were the variables that I changed to make sure that I continue to stimulate progress. So when I started my program, I hadn't really been doing a lot of heavy lifting, and I hadn't really used the trap bar deadlift much before. So based on that, the movement itself was a little bit new, and because I hadn't been doing a lot of heavy lifting up to that point, I chose to use a really simple progression. And for anyone who's just getting back into heavy training, this works well. And then also if you're a beginner, something like this works well. So I basically used a linear progression, and there are lots of different types of linear progressions out there that may or may not be appropriate for you individually, but this one I thought would work really well for me, and I did get quite a bit of progress out of it. So I used what is often called the patient lifters method, and basically the goal is to just add an extra repetition at a given weight. And you can kind of set the parameters for what makes sense for you. But basically, I started at 415, and in the first workout, I did 5 sets of 2. You want to make sure when you start any linear progression that you have a little bit of room to grow. So you do not want to go at something that feels like an absolute max. You want to feel like it's kind of hard, but there's lots of extra ability that you still have not tapped into. So I did 5 sets of 2 at 415. The next week, I did another workout. I did 4 sets of 3 at 415. Then I did 4 sets of 4, 3 sets of 5, 3 sets of 6, 3 sets of 7, and 3 sets of 8. That was my target goal that I was trying to get up to. And then I increased the weight by 20 pounds, and I did basically the exact same progression. So I just built up 4 sets of 3, 4 by 4, 3 times 5, 3 times 6, 7, and 8. Once I got to that, I increased the weight again. Then I did 4 sets of 3 at 455, 4 sets of 4 at 455. Now at that point, I realized that I was getting right to the limits of what I was really able to do. So it was at this point that I just decided to stop that progression and change into something different. Now if you stall and that workout becomes stale after a couple weeks and you fail multiple times, then you're going to want to look at changing up your progression and doing something different. And that's pretty much the same with all linear progression plans. If you stall for more than a couple weeks, it's time to change it up. For me, I basically did one workout like this every single week. So this represents, multiple months of training, just going along nice and slow and steady. And I was able to actually, hit all of my numbers except for one day I missed 1 repetition. But otherwise I was able to get these all done. So that's the patient lifters method, but the problem with any linear progression is that they work really well until they don't, and then you get to the end where you kind of are stuck with, okay, how do I step back, but how do I continue to make progress at this point? What do you do? So when I ran out of steam on the linear progression, because I was relatively close to my goal, which was deadlifting 500 or 505, I decided to try to peak a little bit and see sort of where I could get to for a heavy single. Now, I am terrible at converting good repetition strength into 1RM strength, and so if you plug this into most rep max calculators, it would project that I could do well over 500, but I can't. That's just not how my body works, and I'm going to link to a blog post that I did about this so you can start to understand how your body works and how to adjust your training based upon that. But anyway, I decided to test that out, so I did a peaking phase using kind of a high-low method of undulating my intensity during the week. So instead of doing one main workout in the week, now I did 2. So on Monday, I did submaximal repeated efforts of anywhere between 75 to 85% just to sort of stimulate the movement, but I did not take this up to sort of a true maximum effort in any set. I always had a couple repetitions in the tank, so this was just to get some volume of training in and to practice my movement. Then on Friday, after I was very recovered from Monday, that's when I tried to do a max effort set. Now typically that's going to be done between anywhere from 1 to 5 workouts for one heavy set, or you could do a couple heavy doubles or a few heavy singles, something like that, but very heavy weight, very few repetitions. The goal of this is to push up what you're doing on the max effort day, so in this case Friday. What you're doing on Monday is not as important as the effort and results that you're able to get here. Ultimately, I was able to hit a double at 475 and a single at 485 using this method for a few weeks, and that was pretty much where I topped out. If I had gone with it a little bit more, maybe I could have got a little bit more weight. but that was pretty much it. So now it was time to move on to another phase of training to sort of start rebuilding, and we'll go into that next. And the only thing you can do then is to bring things back down and start to rebuild. Now, a lot of times for me, I always have a big fear because it feels good when you're setting PRs, it feels good when you're hitting those heavy weights, and I get a little bit anxious about, if I drop down, am I even gonna be able to get back up to where I was? You will be, right? This is how it works. You've got to have faith in that rebuilding phase. Drop things down and start progressing back up, build a bigger base of strength, so when you peak the next time, you can go a little bit higher. So what I chose to do, and there are many ways of doing this, is I like to usually start my rebuilding phase with some new exercise variations. And they don't have to be hugely different. I'm actually still using primarily the hex bar deadlift for most of my training. But what I'm doing is on Monday, I'm doing tempo deadlifts. So I'm using a 4-second lowering phase or a 4-second eccentric for all of my sets. And I'm not using a belt, which I was using in most of my other training. So I'm doing 3 to 4 sets of 4 to 6 repetitions. And anytime you have a repetition bracket like that, basically if I'm able to hit 6 good quality repetitions, I always increase the weight on the next set. If I'm not able to hit at least 4, I decrease the weight, and if I'm somewhere in the middle, I stay the same. So I just let those repetitions dictate how much weight I'm going to use that given day. And what I'm looking for here is week to week to be able to improve a little bit on this key exercise of the day, right? That's my #1 priority that I want to improve. That's what I do when I'm the freshest. The other thing that I added in extra is a lot more abdominal and core training. What I noticed was I had a big discrepancy in terms of how solid I felt and also my performance when I had a belt on versus when I didn't have a belt. And obviously wearing a belt is going to boost your performance, but I think that there was too big of a gap there, so I wanted to work on just improving my core stiffness without the belt, which I think is going to transfer later on. Now on Friday, my big priority is halting deadlifts. I've been doing speed deadlifts, which I've been using to kind of warm up. And in week 1, I'm going to do 65%, week 2, 70%, and week 3, 75%. And I'll do some kind of a repetition scheme like 16 sets of 1 every 30 seconds, 8 sets of 2 every minute, 10 sets of 2, something like that. The key thing is you're using a weight that's light enough that you can accelerate off the ground really fast, and that you're putting your maximum effort into each one every single time. So this is a great opportunity to work on technique, building tension out of the bottom, and on creating a bit more explosion or a bit more rate of force development. Now my main thing that I'm focusing on Friday right now is halting deadlifts. So that is when you deadlift, you come up just an inch or 2 off the floor, you pause there for a couple seconds, and then you finish the deadlift. And for me, coming off the floor is the hardest part, so this puts extra emphasis on that segment. I'm doing 3 sets of, again, 4 to 6 repetitions. I'm not using a belt. And again, I'm doing a bunch more abdominal training on that day. So my goal on Friday is to progress the amount of weight or repetitions that I'm doing. And I'm just looking for a little bit of progression. Can I do 1 or 2 extra reps? Can I add a little bit of weight from what I did the previous week? And I'm just going to keep going with that progression as long as I can make progress. Everybody's rate of adaptation is going to be a little bit different. So I may be able to see progress on this for 2 or 3 weeks, or I may be able to see progress on this for 4 or 5 weeks. Everybody's different there, so what you want to do is understand your own rate of adaptation and figure out how long you should stick with the same basic protocol before you need a change to stimulate new progress. So I'm going to just take this progression basically as far as I can. Once I finish with this, I'm going to go back to just the regular variation of the lift and start building that back up, which I'll share how I'm going to do that in another video. So I hope you like this. I hope you got a few ideas about how you can adjust your program, what variables you can tweak, when and why to do that. If you have any questions about this or even maybe about your program, post it in the comments below. I'll try to hit you back. I hope you like this video, and I'll see you on the next one.